Welcome back, friends. Another week of tournaments is all said and done, and I got all the stats here for you. In this video, we're going to look at the previous week's results. We're going to look at winners and losers, take a look at the faction focus, a deeper dive into Chaos Daemons and Black Templars, and we'll take a look at the overall current state of the meta. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Before we get started, we'll do the quick YouTube pleasantries. If you liked this video or found it helpful and informative, please give it a like. It really helps spread it out there for more people to see. And if you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps support me and support the channel. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, first we're going to take a look at the player numbers for the previous week. Last week we had 411 players, and for the Dataslate we're sitting at just over 3,700. Number of games played last week was just under 2,500, and for the Dataslate we're sitting at just under 19,500. And we had 9 tournaments last week, so it was a little bit light on tournaments, and we're sitting at 60 total for the current Dataslate. First thing we're going to look at this week is the win percentages by armies for the previous week. Sitting at the top, we had Drukhari at 62%. They had a very good win rate, but they only had 4 players last week, so the data is a little bit unreliable. We also had Chaos Daemons at 56%, Tyranids and Grey Knights both at 55%, and then we have a whole string of pretty much every army sitting in that nice sweet spot of 45 to 55%. Down at the bottom, we do have Chaos Knights sitting at 36% and Black Templars at 31%, so they are the armies that are really feeling it. They have bad Grotmas detachments, and just kind of showing they never got the love they needed like every other army did, and they're struggling to have any success in this Dataslate. And another note is Grey Knights. They've been struggling a little bit, but they seem to have found some footing in the last week, sitting at 55% for the week, so that's good to see. But overall, everyone's doing pretty good. There's a lot of green on this chart for everyone that's in that acceptable GW win rate, and most armies are finding decent success when they go to tournaments, so it's nice to see everyone is doing fairly well. And next we're going to look at the army representation. So this is the percentage of players who represented each army. The average is about 3.7%, so anything above that is more people played the army, anything less is less people played. So Space Marines sitting unsurprising 9.5%. They're almost triple the average representation. This is, they're a popular army to begin with, even when they're bad, and now that they're good and they're having some success, that number's just skyrocketing. It keeps going up and up and up, so it's unsurprising to see. And then we also have Orcs and Necrons at the top, sitting at 7.3%. Also very popular armies. Orcs are almost always up over 4 or 5%. They're just a popular army, same as Necrons, but they're both having some success with the new Grotmas detachments, especially Necrons, even though after the nerfs they've kind of dropped down a little bit, but people are still bringing them a lot until they kind of figure out a new way to play them. And you have Chaos Daemons and Astra Militarum, both over 6% as well. So Astra Militarum's not surprising. Demons, a little surprising. They're usually not that popular, but they've got 4 new detachments, lots of new toys to play with, and the Demon players are really loving it. And then down at the bottom, for I think the first time ever, Black Templars had less players than Agents. Agents was the second least played army. So Black Templars players are really feeling it. Only 2 people showed up with Black Templars last week, and I think Agents had 3. So that tells you the state that Black Templars are in, that they have less representation on the board than Agents. So they definitely need some help. Moving on to the players who went X-0, X1. So this is the percentage of players who had no losses or 1 losses at a tournament. The average is usually around 13 to 15%. So looking at the chart here, you can see Deathwatch kind of ran away with it this week, almost 30%. So they're almost double the average. So, they had a strong showing at LVO. They won LVO, and they just keep bringing it the next week, seeing a lot of success. Death Guard and Thousand Sons are 2 armies that have been struggling a little bit, but they're up over 20% this week, so that's nice to see. They're kind of starting to find some footing in the new Dataslate. Players are finding and adapting to new ways to play them. You have Grey Knights, Space Marines, Tyranids all at 18%, Space Marines at 17.9%, so almost 18%. So, a lot of armies sitting up above average here, doing pretty well. And then we get to the rough spot down the bottom. We have 6 armies with 0% X0, X1. Now, thing to note for all these armies is only one of these armies, Dark Angels, had more than 10 players. And Dark Angels, I think, only had 12 players. So these are armies that are struggling, and people do not want to play them. You're getting 4, 5, 6 players across all the tournaments bringing each army here, and they're not seeing any, really good success. They might be doing 3-2 or going 3-3, but they're not seeing those 4-1s, 5-0s, and winning those tournaments. So Definitely a lot of armies last week feeling it. While the win rate might be balanced, the X0X1 kind of shows where the power kind of lies. So the next chart will kind of break that down a little bit better for us. The next chart we're going to look at is all the stats put together. So win rate, X0X1, and representation. So this is a good way to see how an army is doing sort of overall, combining all the stats. The farther the bar goes across, sort of the better their overall percentages are across all the categories. So you look at Drukhari at the top, they had a 62% win rate, but they had a 0% X0X1. So everyone who brought them did 3 and 2, basically. So they did well as a tournament, but they didn't have enough success to sort of get into any of the later rounds. You have Demons, Grey Knights, and Tyranids all sitting roughly about the same distance across, 55% across the board, 16 to 18%, and then like 4 to 6% representation. So armies are doing above average in all categories, which is nice to see. And then you have sort of matching that down below is Deathwatch, only a 49% win rate, but a 28% X0X1. So even though they only had 1% representation, 30% of their players did extremely well at the tournament. So there's definitely a lot of play with Deathwatch right now to sort of get to those end tables and have a chance to sort of get in the finals or semifinals of a tournament. And then down at the bottom, unsurprisingly, you have Black Templars and Chaos Knights. Black Templars 31% win rate last week. They had a 0% X0X1, unsurprisingly, and a 0.5% representation. And same as Chaos Knights 36, they had 0 and a 1.9. So they did have some more representation, but the fact that Chaos Knights had a 1.9% rep and still a 0% X0X1 shows that they just also struggled mightily. They doesn't look like anyone had any success with either army. So the Grotmas detachments for those armies, like I mentioned before, they're kind of uninspiring and causing some issues. Players are probably feeling a little disillusioned and don't want to bring them too much, so that's probably why you're seeing their representation sort of drop down a little bit. They got to do something to sort of pump something back into them and give people that like spark to want to play something new. It's nothing more demoralizing than seeing everybody else get a whole bunch of fun new toys to play with, and yours is just not that good. So it makes you want to play with those fun toys, so you kind of abandon those armies that just didn't get that shiny new thing that's any good. And we're going to look at the tournament wins for each army last week. So Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines sitting on top with 2 wins each. Not surprising for Space Marines, they've been doing pretty well. Chaos Space Marines, it's nice to see. They haven't been, lighting the world on fire with this Dataslate, but 2 tournament wins there is nice to see. So next up we have the faction focus, and the first one I'm going to look at is the Chaos Daemons. So this is an army that has been doing very well since the Dataslate dropped, and if you look at their numbers over week, you can see the results there showing it. The representation is up since the Dataslate dropped, almost 2%. The win rate is up almost 5% since the Dataslate dropped. So the players are bringing them and they're showing more success. So these new detachments are really sort of pushing that forward. Demonic Incursion, the index, still has 45% of players playing it. You have Legion of Excess with over 35% of people. So over a third of people are bringing the Slaanesh Legion of Excess army, and it's got a 64% win rate. So there's definitely a lot going on with that army. And they have 6 tournament wins, and Legion of Excess has 5 of them. So I have a feeling we're going to see some changes made to sort of bring them back down a little bit. That looks like something that could get out of hand, especially when it's sort of dominating the finals and winning a lot. There's probably something there that's a little too overpowered for people who know how to use it. But then you also have things like Plague Legion. It might be low representation, but a 60% win rate. Scintillating Legion. We had a player last week who went 8-0 with Scintillating Legion for a big tournament in Australia, and they won, and their win rate is 56%. And even the detachments that are struggling, Blood Legion and Demonic Incursion, I wouldn't even say they're struggling. They're at 47%. A lot of detachments would kill for a 47% win rate. So Demons is definitely in a good spot right now. And their ranks out of 27 across the board is in the top 10, which is really, that's way above average. So that's definitely showing an army that is sitting high on the charts right now and is in a really good spot. So Demon players are probably pretty happy with everything they got over Christmas. And we're going to take a look at the other side of the spectrum for the next faction focus, and this is going to be with Black Templars. So this is kind of the opposite end of the story here. Their Grotmas detachment was not very good, and since the last Dataslate, they have sort of been dropping and dropping. The representation is down. Did see a little bit of spike the last couple weeks, but this week really showing it. People, I think, have starting to have enough, kind of getting fed up. Their win rate before the last Dataslate was in the 50s on average, and now it's in the mid to low 40s on average. So again, really struggling across the board. Just highlighting their Grotmas Detachment, Wrathful Procession. 4% of people are playing it, and they have a 31% win rate. Not great. You know, it kind of leaves that sour taste in your mouth. And looking at the ranks out of 27 compared to all other armies, they are in the bottom 7 of pretty much everything. They did manage 1 tournament win, so they're kind of sitting mid there, but overall they're, you know, bottom 7 army across all categories, so they're not in a very great space, so they definitely need some help. And now we're going to move on to the tournament meta results for the current Dataslate. So this is 5 weeks of tournament results. We're going to look at the win percentage by army. So, you know, this is a really green chart, which is really nice to see. Most armies are within that, you know, 45-55%. Even the armies that are at the top, quote unquote, are sitting at 53%, which is nothing to write home about, considering, you know, last Detachment we had moments where over 4 or 5 weeks Gene Stealers were over 60%, and Drukhari were over 60%, and Sisters were over 60%. So, you know, all these armies doing extremely well for long periods of time, and then so far this Dataslate, everyone is just kind of maintaining. No one's really running away with it. We do have some stuff at the bottom that is in a little bit of trouble, you know, 40%, 43%, 44% for Mechanicus, Chaos Knights, and Black Templars. You know, unsurprising based on everything else we've already seen, but if we can do a little bit of help to bring them back up into the, you know, 47, 48%, we could be seeing an almost entirely green chart here soon, and that would be one of the first times I think I've ever seen that in a long time. All right, and then we're going to take a look at the army tournament wins week by week. So this is the army's total number of tournament wins, and each color represents the number of tournament wins they got in that given week. So Space Marines sitting on top right now with 7, and then you have Orcs and Demons sitting at 6. So Space Marines are definitely still doing the best overall for tournaments. They've got that punch. I mean, they do have like an 8% representation on average or something, so they definitely do have the player numbers to just sort of get into those tournaments and win them. You know, you don't see a lot of armies up here with a really low representation. You know, more players, more numbers, more chances to win, especially if they're good. You're going to have those top players starting to bring them. Orcs and Demons sitting at 6 wins, Necrons at 5, Dark Angels at 4, but they haven't won any since week 2, so I don't really know how long they're going to stay up near the top as more tournaments come in. Chaos Space Marines, Asher Militarum at 4, and then everyone else sort of petering down into 0. So we do still have a lot of armies without wins, so I would like to see some of them starting to get some wins here. Surprisingly, Tyranids with 0, they're a very high represented army, and they still have 0 wins, so there's definitely something going on. I don't know if it's just luck or what have you, but the rest of the armies with 0 are very low represented armies, and armies that are kind of struggling, so it's not really surprising to see them down there, but you know, you'd like to see those numbers sort of shifted down a little bit and a more of an even chart instead of this big huge spike at the end. Alright, and the last thing we're going to look at for the week is the meta health rating for the current Dataslate. Meta health rating is a statistic I created that sort of takes an army's statistics and compares it against the averages across all armies. So if an army has on average a higher win percentage, X0, X1, or representation, their meta health rating is going to be higher. So the average is 100. So if everybody is sitting at 100, everyone would be perfectly average. So if you're sitting above 100, that means you're slightly doing above average in some categories. And if you're below 100, you're doing below average in some categories. So we have at the top here, we have Necrons, Imperial Agents, Space Marines, and Chaos Demons all sitting up around 130. So they're, you know, doing on average maybe 30% better than the average of across all armies in most categories. So there are armies that are definitely doing a little bit too well, whether it's through representation or X0X1 or tournament wins. So there's something to be adjusted there, something to look at. And then we have the armies at the other side of the spectrum. We got Chaos Knights and Black Templars. They're down below 80, which is almost the exact opposite side of the spectrum. So they are, you know, almost 30% below average compared to the rest of the army. So this is something that definitely needs to be looked at. If we could bring those numbers down closer to the average and those numbers at the bottom up a little bit through some adjustments, we'd see a better health across the game, and you see a lot more armies being represented and a lot more armies doing well, which is what you want to see. You want to be able to have a feeling that you're going to win, or have a chance to win with every army that you own, or every army you potentially own. You don't want to show up to a tournament with Black Templars and know your fate is sealed. You want, you know, whether you have a real legitimate chance to win or not, you want to know that your army has a chance, if you do everything right, to win. And sometimes with some armies you just don't have that against other armies, and we're getting closer to a state where everything is nice and balanced, but right now there's still a few armies who are struggling that could be brought up to sort of make everything a little bit better. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all your support. If you found this video helpful or informative, just a reminder, please give it a like. It helps push it out there for more people to see. And if you liked it and you want to see some more, make sure you subscribe. It really helps support me, support the channel, and you'll be getting all my newest videos that come out every week. So thank you again, and I'll see you next week.